Hey there, and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete, and today we complete episode 18 of our Rimworld series in the Cold Bog with the Cult of Jinx. Last time we left off after an eventful episode in which we opened up an ancient danger, and with the not quite voluntary help of a trade caravan, we defeated the insects inside, and now have ourselves a lovely source of insect meat and jelly. Near the end of the episode, however, half of the colony unfortunately came down with the flu, but that may have been a blessing in disguise for Reddini, who now has the chance to gain valuable medical experience. At the moment, she is still at level 4, but level 5 is not too far away, and that is where we want to get her as quickly as possible to make our latest recruit Chutney a productive member of the colony. Before we get to that though, let's start things off here with another very important project, as Coco and Thoraya are currently planting devilstrand mushrooms in a 7x5 field. Right now it is still warm enough outside so that the mushrooms will have no trouble growing on their own, but we are in the Cold Bog and temperatures are soon going to drop again. I have an idea, however, on how we should be able to get ourselves a small Neolithic greenhouse going, completely without any hydroponics or other fancy technologies. To make that eventual greenhouse a bit easier to reach, we are now also constructing ourselves a bridge over the river here. We are slowly but steadily running out of space on the right side of the water anyway, so as the colony continues to grow, some form of expansion over here will be inevitable. In the evening then, Coco, Maniac and Tuk go buffalo hunting. We have a small herd camped right outside of the village, and with all of our berries lately going into kibble production, this is a welcome source of meat. Late at night then, everyone but Specs has already developed an immunity against their flu, and perhaps to celebrate her contributions, Reddini now receives a trade inspiration, so the next time we stumble upon a caravan we might be able to strike a lucrative deal. After receiving another dose of medicine, it is then time for Specs to head over to the anima tree to finally complete her linking ritual. We are advancing her to Psycaster rank 5 now, which has a lovely array of abilities to choose from. Before we can see what she gets though, we welcome another muffalo into the colony of Livienna, as Cheeseman has given birth and the new calf will now go by the name of Max Soplo, as always chosen from the list of patrons in the naming rights tier and above. That now makes it 8 muffalos, and that should be the final number for now. After all, we want to keep that colony wealth in check, at least for the time being. A few hours later then, Specs' linking ritual is complete. Despite no one else attending, it did reach a quality of 40%, and most importantly, it gave her a new psycast, Berserk. Now, I will admit I had kind of hoped for Fast Skip for a bit more caravan flexibility, but Berserk is definitely not bad either. It is, however, a bit more reproducible, if you will, with the purchase of Psychic Insanity Lances. Still, I am not going to complain, unlike our colonists, who are probably not too keen on the fact that a rain has set in, and so we watch as Reddini gets wet while constructing a few wooden shelves here. These are meant to store some of the clothing items that Armando is pumping out, as he is already producing a full outfit of tribal wear, leather armor and cape for Chutney, so that our latest recruit can get himself into some proper attire as soon as he's able to walk again. The bridge, meanwhile, is then also finally completed, and you can see it here. We have already begun the next construction project, as we of course need to close off all of those small side entrances to the base relatively soon. In the evening then, Armando receives his regularly scheduled anti-asthma treatment from Reddini, and that finally does it. Reddini has now reached level 5 in the medical skill. And that means it's time. Let us schedule an anti-abasia mechanite infusion for Chutney here, which will consume 10 units of Glitter World medicine, and thankfully we do in fact have 12. We are also moving Chutney over into the legendary slab bat for this, although I'm not entirely sure if this is an operation that can in fact fail. Still, better to be safe than sorry. Let's see how Reddini performs. And there we go, Chutney's paralytic abasia has been cured, making him available to us 17 days earlier than planned, although of course he now still needs to sleep off the anesthetic. Just in that moment, we are also informed of a hunting worksite nearby. And even though it is in fact very close to Livienna, it is also controlled by a faction that is currently not hostile to us, not to mention one that possesses proper guns, and I don't think it's worth getting on their bad side just for a handful of bearskin and pemmican. A few hours later then, Chutney finally takes his first steps inside of Livienna, and the first thing he does is put on some proper tribal clothing. Still a bit woozy from the anesthetic, here we can see him start sharing some of the muffalos, as he does have a solid animal handling skill, and we are still looking for someone to take over that role from Coco so that she can become our plant specialist. In order to fully replace her, Chutney would need to reach level 10 in the animal handling skill though, as that is the minimum skill level required to handle grizzly bears. As Armando then finishes an excellent quality blue fur cape in the afternoon, Chutney can put that on as well to give himself a good amount of protection, and with that he almost looks like a fully fledged member of the Cult of Jinx. The only thing still missing is his ritual scar, but we'll get to that in a second. For now we unlock the passive cooler, admittedly not terribly useful out here in the Cold Bog, but perhaps handy should we ever suffer a heatwave. Up next, I think we'll look into psychoid brewing, because psychite tea can actually be pretty interesting, especially for a tribal colony, and as you can see, the project should be quickly unlocked. In the meantime, in the background, our fourth, and at least for now final woodmaker dryad has also finally hatched, so named after patron Steve Noodles, we welcome Noodles to the colony, and with that increase our daily wood production to 128 units. Now, let's get back to that ritual scarf for Chutney, which I think he needs to earn himself. For that purpose, we are quickly constructing a third bedroll over here, and then we are setting up a caravan, because we still have this quest for the Horn of Edmo taking place fairly close to Livienna. Once again, an old complex wants to be investigated, and to prove his loyalty to the Cult of Jinx, we are sending Chutney out on this one, accompanied of course by our combat specialist Maniac, as well as by Reddini, not only because she might be useful as a field medic, but also because she carries the psychic insanity lance, and who knows, maybe we end up needing that. To speed up the caravan a bit, and for some extra carrying capacity, we are also bringing our two muffalos Tina and Redea, and in terms of supplies, we are leaving most of the stuff here as it is, but we are cranking the number of simple meals down a notch, as all three of our colonists have recently eaten and also carry some in their inventory. Once the caravan is then loaded up, it shortly after leaves the village, while the remaining Specs, Jackna and Coco hunt themselves a polar bear. Just before nightfall then, Maniac, Reddini and Chutney make it onto the world map, so they will travel for perhaps an hour or two, before they then set up camp and continue their journey tomorrow. Shortly after then, our local bug hive once again reproduces, and so it looks like we are going insect hunting again tomorrow. First of all though, let us close off one of those smaller western entrances, and then once everyone is up and about, we can assemble our hunting party. And really nothing too crazy here, one quick vertigo pulse gives us a bit of breathing room, and even though the bugs seem to find our new bridge just as useful as we do, we have enough firepower here to stop them from doing any damage. And so, after just a few moments of fighting, the last insect goes down, and so we can quickly send over Thoraya to take care of the hive. We are also going to move our exterior wall a bit further away from the remaining hive, although just in that moment we are informed that Jackna has suffered an injury, as it looks like one small bug has slipped through the cracks. That is of course not what we want, and even though it quickly goes down, it deals a good amount of damage in the process, and even worse, since Jackna was our secondary doctor behind Reddini, those injuries will now have to be tended to by Specs with a medical skill of 2, although it looks like she's doing a fairly competent job all things considered. Now, as you can see, we have also hauled some of the insect jelly back to the base, as I am seriously debating whether or not we should switch our food supply over to insect jelly meals. On one hand, that would save us a lot of time that we normally spend hunting for meat, but then again there are also a good number of animals, like wolves or bears for example, that we hunt not only for their meat but also for their fur, so I'm not entirely sure if we would really be gaining much. I also don't know if 1 or 2 hives would actually produce enough to keep our entire colony fed, so I think I'll have to do the math on that at some point. Down the line, should we actually be able to get ourselves a small devilstrand production going, then I think it would actually allow us to stop hunting altogether. That is, if we don't count the insects, which of course we still need to kill, not only because they are threatening us, but also for their meat for kibble. In any case, on the following morning, our small caravan finally reaches the destination, and when it comes to ancient complexes, so far it doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. The map is full of caves, but our point of interest lies exposed right in the middle, so let's head over there, crack things open and see what we find. Right, so we start things off with a security crate and an unstable fuel node, so we probably want to skip this room for now and dig our way into the next one. Here we find an ancient comms console linked to a supply satellite, and we also discover the first of 2 terminals that we need to hack. In addition, we also have 2 ancient cryptosleep pods that probably do not have friendly faces inside of them, so let us continue our tour for now before we interact with anything. A 3rd cryptosleep pod is then located in the room below, but nothing else, and in the room to the right we then find the 2nd terminal. If we wanted to play it as safe as possible, this is all that we need, but of course we are here to explore, and that is rewarded with a hermetic crate in the next room here. Inside we find yet another joy wire that Maniac can quickly pick up, and then we can open up the last door of the structure. Alright, looks like we want to be very careful with this one. Not only do we have a sleeping mega spider, but also another fuel node, so I think we are not going to touch these crates anytime soon, at least not before Maniac and Chutney have finished hacking. As they start doing that, and Reddini clears a few additional exits should things get dicey, we are also informed that the ancients inside of those cryptosleep pods will wake up in 12 hours, although I don't think that it should take us that long to clear this area. And so, while we wait for the hacking to finish, we can quickly jump back home, where we can see that the colony of Livienna is living peacefully, with Coco, Specs and Thoraya all pruning their Garanden trees. A few moments later then, I think it is time to hack the comms console linked to the supply satellite. Like I said, we are hopefully not going to spend too many hours on this map, so even though a small amount of deterioration will probably happen, the blue fur here should not take any significant damage. Unfortunately though, the supply drop has also attracted a few enemies, although once again Randy has apparently decided to have some fun with this one, as both of them only come equipped with EMP grenades. As Maniac then finishes hacking the first terminal, it is time to slowly grab the rest of the valuables, although as you can see here, as soon as he opens up the crate, things start to get tricky. A quick stun does allow him to grab the 5 advanced components without being attacked just yet, and just in that moment Chutney also finishes working on his terminal, and with that the quest is complete and the next raid arrives. This time it consists of 2 tribespeople who are coming in from the same direction as the 2 grenadiers, so who knows, perhaps they end up taking each other out before they even reach us. In the meantime, Maniac and Chutney are doing their best to dash out of the complex while Reddini opens the last crate, and in doing so she triggers not only the fuel cell inside of her room but also the 3rd cryptosleep pod. So things are certainly heating up here, as we have an ancient soldier with a bolt-action rifle on our heels, not to mention that Maniac is also still being pursued by the mega spider. However, all of that might just end up being a beautiful mess working in our favor, because conveniently enough, it looks like all of those enemies are now about to meet each other in the middle of the map. And while they are all occupied with each other, that allows us to single out a target, and since they are only pursuing one of us, it's also quite easy not to get hit here. The death of their comrade in the middle of the fray then also already sends them packing, and with that, the first group of hostiles is taken care of. For the next few moments, we can now simply sit back and watch, as it looks like the remaining enemies are doing a fantastic job decimating each other. A final one-on-one confrontation then sadly falls victim to the ancient soldier puking their brains out, and so Chutney and Maniac need to loosen a few arrows to stop the next attacker here. That now leaves us only with that ancient soldier and their bolt-action rifle, and I think we are trying our luck in a straight-up shootout here. Our colonists are moderately well protected, and our enemy only has a shooting skill of 2, and they're also not exactly feeling fresh at the moment. We are also already sneaking Reddini around the back to perhaps land the killing blow from behind, but as you can see, it looks like that is not going to be necessary. Now, we have 5 more hours here until the other 2 cryptosleep caskets open, and I think it would be best if we are out of here by then. However, we are not leaving just yet. Instead, we are having Reddini patch up one of the attackers, while Maniac and Chutney shoot down the other one who briefly recovered. And no, we are not exactly doing this with the intention of capturing them, but much more so because I think that the Cult of Jinx has earned themselves another entertaining execution. After all, these guys here attacked us in our search for the Horn of Edmo, by all accounts one of the most powerful artifacts out there, and I would say that that should not go unpunished. Now, with another Arctic wolf also killed and butchered and with our prisoner patched up, I think it's time to get out of here, although overall our loot from this mission was once again a bit disappointing. A badly injured prisoner, some advanced components, a bit of blue fur and wolf skin, not to mention yet another joy wire and some gold. I think overall these ancient complexes could definitely use a bit more loot variety, especially the joy wires are a bit annoying at this point. Still, I think this expedition was more than enough to prove Chutney's worth to the Cult of Jinx and to the village of Livienna, and so we are now eagerly awaiting our hero's return back home. Back in Livienna, meanwhile, we are now finally starting to work on something that has been on our to-do list for many episodes, as Armando here is finally constructing ourselves a styling station. Thoraya has been wanting to change her style for a long time now, so let us give her a small makeover. We can see Thoraya here on the left, both with and without her mask, and apparently the thing that's been bothering her is her hairstyle. As you can see, we have a good number of options to choose from here, and we could for example now give her the same hairstyle as Coco or Specs, but let's go with something entirely different here and pick the Firestarter style. I think that looks sufficiently tribal and cult-like. The look change then, by the way, only removes the negative thought, but does not add a positive one. A little later in the evening then, it is buffalo hunting time as we are slowly running out of meat, and our attack unfortunately causes the animals to frenzy, so it looks like we won't have any other choice but to kill them all. And thanks to the ever-popular peekaboo tactics, that is a relatively risk-free, albeit fairly time-consuming endeavor. Ultimately though, after a few hours of hunting, the meat situation for the next few days can definitely be considered solved. On the next morning then, we are closing off yet another one of our small base entrances. Ultimately, we do want everyone to approach us through the river. And shortly after we are being notified that we may have stockpiled just a bit too much insect meat, the next problem arrives, this time in the form of a pack of man-hunting wolfhounds. These have been added by the Vanilla Faction's expanded Vikings mod, and as their name suggests, they sit somewhere in between dogs and wolves. However, stats-wise, they actually move a bit faster than wolves, so we definitely want to be careful here. That is why we are now sending all of our archers over to the eastern gate of our colony, otherwise we risk an uncontrollable wave of wolfhounds rushing straight into the village, and in that case I don't think we can kill them quick enough to avoid getting surrounded. So we are doing it this way, which is once again going to be quite time-consuming. However, with a door to shut behind us and a few psychic abilities at our disposal, I don't think we are in any danger here. And so the night slowly rolls around, and as you can see, our colonists are still shooting, although the number of animals is slowly getting smaller. Eventually then, we are down to only one last wolfhound that is still actively roaming around, and for some reason it doesn't seem to be overly interested in attacking anyone, which could actually end up being a problem, because right around this time our caravan returns. And of course, they enter the map as far away from the village as possible. Luckily for them, a Maniac possesses the stun ability, allowing them to clear the threat before advancing any further. Still, our 3 explorers do not make it home completely unscathed, as Chutney suffers a mental break just a few meters away from home. The reason? Well, we may or may not have fed our caravan some kibble on the way back, as the number of simple meals we originally gave them might have been a slightly conservative estimate. In any case, Chutney is now running around in a daze, while Specs has already brought our prisoner into their new home. Not for long though, because again the goal here is not to recruit. The execution will have to wait though until Chutney has regained his composure. I think as the newest recruit he should be part of this. In the early morning hours then the bug hive once again reproduces, and so another day of hunting is likely ahead of us. Before we begin though, Thoraya quickly finishes the research of psychoid brewing, and so we now technically have the knowledge to make psychoid tea, although we would need some psychoid leaves for that first. For now, let us continue down the path of slightly addicting drinks and research beer brewing next, after which we might then actually already be near the end of what is worth researching, at least in the Neolithic portion of this series. A few hours later then, we have some visitors appear on the map, only 2 tribalists though, and they're completely naked, which is actually part of their ideology and should therefore gather some sympathies from Thoraya, so even though we could, we are not going to attack them. Instead, we are admittedly probably wasting Reddini's trade inspiration on them, but it expires in 2 days anyway, and the chances for another caravan to pass by until then are rather slim. So let us make at least a bit of silver by selling the joy wire and some wake up, and after that we can send the caravan on their merry way. Reddini herself, meanwhile, can slowly begin the construction of that greenhouse I mentioned earlier. Yes, we do still have a few days of summer ahead of us, but one way or another we have to use all of that wood our dryads are producing. Suddenly then, 2 things are happening at once here. First of all, Vladimir has given birth to another grizzly bear, which we'll take care of in just a second. A bit more pressing though is Tuk once again going on a food binge. For now though, we will indulge him and instead jump over to Livienna's latest edition, as, once again named after a Patreon supporter, we welcome grizzly bear Clay Brown to the colony. Very fitting, with their last name being Brown and all that, but there is no time to celebrate, at least not for Tuk, who is now once again being put into prison by Reddini to snap him out of his mental break. Is that entirely necessary? Well, absolutely not. We have plenty of meals for him to consume after all. However, these food binges can last for quite some time that Tuk is probably better off making more meals, not to mention that his sanguine trait easily cancels out the imprisonment penalty anyway. And of course, we do not only need Tuk to cook for us, he is also an excellent hunter, and with all of those bugs still roaming around, and with our visitors likely running into them here, I think it would be best to have him along. And well, what a great coincidence it is that we did snap him out of it, as we have yet another manhunter pack arrive, this time in the form of 3, no, not 4 Fenrirs. Once again, these are added by the Vanilla Factions Expanded Vikings mod, and all things considered, they are probably as dangerous as Thrumbos, if not more so. As a matter of fact, they move faster and deal more damage than a Thrumbo, while their fur is almost as tough to pierce, so we are definitely dealing with 3 formidable foes here. Unfortunately though, before we can shift our attention over to them, we have to take care of those insects first. Luckily there aren't that many of them this time around, but still this does take up valuable time. So as soon as the last bug goes down, we can already see the first Fenrir at our gates, and so I think it is time to reach deep into our bag of tricks. First of all, we do of course want to send our firing squad into position, and then we want to draw the Fenrir's attention with specs. Keep in mind that Chutney is still running around the base dazed and confused, making him a very easy target as soon as he steps outside. To avoid that, we are now using Specs' full range of abilities, starting with a skip to move the Fenrir away from the base, followed up shortly after by a vertical pulse to render it harmless, at least for the time being. Ironically enough, just in that moment we also receive a quest to hunt a Fenrir, but for now I would say that we have enough on our plate with these 3. Now, to fire off the second vertical pulse on Fenrir number 2 here, we actually need to go above Specs' neural heat limit, which actually has a chance to cause her a psychic breakdown, but because we are only moving a few points above the limit, the chances for that are small, and as you can see, they do not manifest themselves. Instead, it actually looks like we are gaining the upper hand against the Fenrirs here. As long as the vertical pulse is active, we do not have too much to fear from them, but still they did get uncomfortably close. That means right now we only have 1 more left to worry about, which seems to be on an interesting course away from the village, but even as it turns around, all on its own it does not really stand too much of a chance, at least as long as we're able to not only pepper it with arrows, but with psycasts as well. And that, I think, concludes a stressful evening out here in the Cold Bog. Unfortunately, we can see here that our guests were not as lucky as we were, so we will be able to reclaim the stuff that we sold them, and Reddini's trade inspiration was in fact completely wasted. Still, to end things for today, we have one more interesting event taking place here, as we are informed of a wild woman wandering in. Now, her incapability of violence might already be a deal-breaker to some of you. To me, she looks at least somewhat useful as perhaps another plants person, but feel free to let me know what you think about her, her traits, her skills, and her non-existing injuries. Should we try to recruit her, or should she become the next sacrifice to Jinx? And with that, I think we have reached a good point to make the cut for today. And as always, we are wrapping things up with some fan art, once again accompanied by the official Cult of Jinx theme, which you can actually now find on Spotify. I will leave a link to that down below. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this artwork referencing the last episode, with Thoraya pruning her Garandland tree while a trade caravan does our work for us. And of course, I also hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me, then you can of course do that, for example by subscribing, by grabbing some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or by checking out and maybe even pledging to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.